Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Radical Respect podcast. I'm Kim Scott.
I'm Wesley Faulkner, co-host of Radical Respect podcast, and we have a new guest today. One that is definitely a person that's really done personally to move the needle in terms of DEI awareness, inclusion, and has a very, very storied background, Ellen Powell. And Kim, could you please read her bio?
Sure. So Ellen is a tech investor and advocate. She's the former CEO of Reddit and a co-founder of the award-winning diversity and inclusion nonprofit Project Include. Ellen needs no introduction, but there it is. Welcome, Ellen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you both for having me.
Really excited to have you here.
Yes.
Thanks.
Wesley has been agitating, is so excited to meet you. And I am always excited to be chatting with you. Why don't we just start off with Project Include? I would love to hear what's new with Project Include and how you're thinking about that organization in this environment.
Yeah, it's an interesting time.
Yeah.
Project Include turns 10 next year, and it's an organization that came out of a group of us just kind of deciding like, hey, people don't have the information they need to be inclusive. They're getting all this information that, just run and, what they called unconscious bias training for an hour and a half, go out and do a press release, and all of a sudden the people will come and you can hire them and they'll be all great.
Yeah.
And we're like, it needs so much more.
Yeah.
And we came up with, I think it was 87 different recommendations. We put them into a document and then we put it on a website. And then people wanted more. Like they were like, we want to do more stuff. We need more information. This is super helpful. So we ended up running cohorts, teams of CEOs to kind of work on it a little bit together and to run surveys to find out where their weak spots were. And then 6 months later, like, having done some work, where are the new weak spots and have you made progress and can we hold each other accountable here? During COVID, we weren't able to do that. We have them meet in person, so it wasn't a risk we were willing to take. And we ended up doing some research on like, how did COVID affect the workplace? And we found that, not surprisingly, it had a negative impact. People had, I think 97% of the people that we surveyed had gone remote, and it was causing a lot of harm. People were still super hostile and they were still harassing people over video, over the phone. All of a sudden you're in your bedroom and you're getting all of this. It was causing a lot of anxiety. And we had a bunch of recommendations around like, what are things you should not be doing in this environment? How do you think about the anxiety that's been created? How do you create space for people to take time off? People were working all the time. They were expected to, like, I know you're home, so let me give you some more work to do. But how do you then manage people in an environment where, they are home, but they're struggling? So, it was a very necessary piece, I think, and we've ended up doing more reports like that. How are disabled workers treated in the workplace, and what are the kind of common assumptions and stereotypes, and how do we break through them? We did one with Tech Equitable on how contract workers are treated and what are the ways that you should be treating them. And most recently, we are in the process of getting ready to publish a report with MMG Earth on, how should you be incorporating AI into the workplace? What are the things that, people are doing that aren't working? What are the problems with these products? What are the ethical risks? What are the environmental risks? And then what are ways that you can still incorporate it, but in a thoughtful way where you know what your employees are doing. Most people don't know what their employees are doing, and a lot of people are using AI without their company approval or knowledge. And how can you really make a thoughtful decision on whether to incorporate it, and then whether it's working once you've incorporated it, and and how do you ameliorate some of the risks around adoption?
Yeah. So important and so interesting. I mean, one of the things that you found, I think, during COVID is that in a virtual environment, there's more bias, more prejudice, more bullying. So
Yeah.
why is that, and what can folks do about it?
I think we're in a similar time now where there's just a
Yeah,
lot more anxiety. Like people are
yeah,
afraid there's something out of their control, and it is, and it is an existential threat, right? So they end up kind of lashing out at each other in a way that's not super healthy or productive, but it is kind of a human instinct. So, how
yeah,
do you try to alleviate that anxiety? How do you create forms of connection? And one of the people I spoke with, Professor Leanne Williams from Stanford, said like connection is what can be extremely healing and can
yeah,
alleviate anxiety. You feel like, you've made that connection and somebody has your back, right?
yeah.
And it's not transactional. It's like, I care about you. I care about how you're dealing in these times, and I want to connect with you on a personal level.
So
And
important.
and Project Include, you you kind of focus on the tech industry, and of course this happens with a lot of different verticals and industries. Is there anything specific about tech that kind of lends itself either to this type of behavior or either the more amenable to kind of finding ways to get past it? Why tech specifically? What are the things that make tech kind of like a good place to focus?
I think it's what we knew. That's what the cohort of us knew. But I also think looking back and seeing what we've learned since we launched almost 10 years ago, it's an environment where people were very wedded to this, and you know this, Kim, idea of meritocracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Every decision was right. We know what we're doing. Where that, that founder mythology was very strong, and it was so white and male. I mean, it
yeah,
was a very, and it was a very small and often secretive environment, and it's very network dependent, very relationship based. So it was a natural place where a lot of these problems festered, and I think we're just now, aware of how deep it goes, and
Mm-hmm.
what people are saying now, where Elon Musk has gone. It's
yeah,
a very different environment than the kind of meritocratic, everybody gets a fair chance environment that people were promising, that they wanted free speech, but now it's like, no, we don't
Mm-hmm.
want free speech. We want free speech for ourselves and not for anybody else. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of these, secret kind of conditions and situations have started to pop up more publicly, and they're not pretty.
yeah, yeah. And we wanted disruption, but now that we have disrupted someone else, we never want anyone ever to disrupt us.
Yes.
The sort of
Yeah.
hypocrisy is and not just, it's sort of brutal incompetence, really, is what it is.
Yeah. It was
Um,
like, and the amount of wealth generated in such a
yes,
short amount of time.
yeah,
There was so much opportunity, but it was so limited. And
yeah,
you can witness like these people who made these promises or had these relationships, and ended up raising so much money for, products that were like just dumb. Juicero. I mean, you just,
And
absolutely.
I think you also are pointing out, like, speaking of Juiceros, this is the amplification of not just the hubris that some people would have, but also the people who aren't necessarily the most adept at running a company, at doing the right thing, and how easily that they are elevated in this system. And of course, you have a lot of case studies really demonstrating about diversity and how much it it helps with being successful as a company or as an organization. So there's a lot of data and there's a lot of case studies that bring this together to say, like, here we actually have comprehensive information on this, but yet there's still a resistance around DEI in general, seeing it as something that is infesting companies with lower quality, lower standards. How do you like have conversations when you have the data and you have everything that says the opposite, but people are sometimes cemented in this understanding of what DEI is and how bad it is for companies?
Um, sorry, I'm getting an error message here, but I've out of disk space. But you're recording this, right? I don't need to
Yes,
send
we're
a
all
file to
good.
you.
No, we're good.
Um, it's hard, right? There are some people I've just come to understand are not going to change. Like, I don't think Elon Musk and I will ever be on the same page. And there's a whole group of tech barons who are in that category where,
Yeah.
maybe one day they have a child who experiences something and that changes their minds, but like my arguing data to them is not going to change it. And I've just comfortable, I'm not happy with it, but I'm comfortable with like letting go of trying to change something that I cannot change. And the part that I try to focus on is there are a lot of people who do want to figure out how to do it right. And they realize, hey, the data show that I'm going to have better financial results, or I'm going to have a happier employee base, and there's going to be less churn, and I'm going to have better decision making. And I just feel more comfortable when there's more inclusion in the room because people feel more relaxed and it's a better environment. So there are a lot of people who are still committed and are still doing the right things. They're hiding it a little bit more. They don't want to be a target. It is not a good environment to be waving that flag right now. But there is a kind of understanding that like this is progress and we've got
Yeah.
this data and we realize, oh, we were actually holding people behind and we weren't letting our company run at full capacity because we weren't letting people operate at full capacity and we weren't bringing in the best people. So we need to change that. We need to figure out how we improve our hiring processes, how we you know, give people the best opportunities, how we pay people, compensate people better. And it's something that actually helps the whole company, right?
Yeah.
When you have pay ranges and you have job descriptions and you have expectations of what you need to do to be promoted, that's good for everyone. When you're more inclusive, when you allow people to kind of uh, work from where they want to work, or give them opportunities to take time off, that helps everyone, right?
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, only this one group gets this benefit. Everybody benefits from it. And it's so hard when people are so fixated on one group getting something that maybe they've already had forever, that it's complicated. Like, I think if we were to have conversations with a lot of people who think they're against DEI, they would not be opposed to it.
Yeah.
It's not like we're saying you're going to get fired, but there's so much fear. Like, people have been able to stoke so much fear around DEI that it's become this very scary, horrible thing, when it's just, I'm going to make your company better. I'm going to make
Yeah.
you make better decisions. I'm going to have you have more people that you can hire from. And that means like everybody gets lifted up because the company does better and can hire more.
When you're having conversations with CEOs and companies, and they even buy into the bringing in the best people, how much work do they put in the orchestration of the idea? Instead of just saying that's a great idea, let's do it, do they think about actually writing policy? After they have a policy, enforcing the policy. After enforcing the policy, making sure that it's enforced equitably. And then all the steps that fall into and under that when they're trying to do the right thing. Instead of the other side of just like, get rid of it, just you can't do it, to more of like, this is a complex issue. We need to make sure not only do we institute these solutions, but we have to think of the second order, the third order, and the fourth order effect of implementing these types of inclusions. How do you counsel? How do you have conversations around that issue about the commitment and the pipeline of ensuring that this happens?
Think I take it from a higher level. So my goal is to get the CEOs involved. So when we started 10 years ago, CEOs didn't touch DEI, right? There was often a very junior person who had done recruiting for a year or two, who was in charge of DEI and inclusion and really didn't have resources, didn't have any authority, didn't have any power, but made people feel good. Check the box. I got my DEI person, and I don't know who they are. Never had any contact with the CEO, probably under HR someplace, but um, not. anybody who really made a huge difference. So when we started our cohorts, I was very intentional. Like the CEO has to be part of this program and is required to come to these sessions. Like they can bring, like if they want to bring their HR person or if they have a DEI person, have them come. Often, if they were very small, they wanted to bring in their head of engineering who's doing all the hiring. And the idea is like, let's have these CEOs talk with their peers about it. It's a no shame, we're in the cone of silence environment. So you can ask your dumb questions. You can talk to a peer, not somebody who's like 3 levels below you, that you don't have any, that might not have any experience in operations or understand all the different functions of the organization and how they interact. Like, let's talk at a very high level and understand what it is. And then like my push is treat it like you would any other business imperative. So when you bring in a project, you are measuring whether it's successful or not. You're tracking it and you're deciding whether you're going to renew it and what parts of it you want to renew and who worked well on it and who didn't work well on it. And let's do that with DEI. Like, who's the team that's on it? Are they, what products are you using? What metrics are you using? Are they working? And if they're not, like, let's change them. So it was more getting like the CEO buy-in, and then let's start doing these surveys and show you like these are the different metrics we're looking at: satisfaction level, like communication in like 6 different areas, like communication or promotions, and understanding like salaries and compensation, job satisfaction. And these are things that you can measure and you can understand like what groups are unhappy, what groups are happy. And let's start looking at, and then you can use that information to make decisions. And here's a whole set of recommendations that you can start with. I think a lot of them felt kind of, one even said like, I'm the CEO, I'm supposed to know everything. And this is an area I don't feel competent to talk about, so I don't talk about it. And we kind of coached that CEO like, if you want to talk about it, go talk about it with some vulnerability, like tell people
Yeah.
that you're not the expert, and but that it's important to you, so you want to show that you're committed to it. He went out and did that at an all hands, and the co-founder came back and said it was amazing. Like, he was so awkward, so uncomfortable, but so many people said that that was the most leadership he had shown in his 5 or 10 year term as a founding CEO. So there's, it's like helping people understand where they can be and what they can do and how to do it in a way that that kind of keeps you away from, he was worried, oh, I'm going to use the wrong term. Like, we're
Yeah.
such a progressive company. But it's like, it's okay. Just tell them that you're sorry for using the wrong term, because you're going to, because you're not the expert. And that's okay. But I think, giving people a space to grow and to acknowledge their willingness and desire to grow, I think is important. But getting the CEO to that point where they feel comfortable owning it and actually treating it like a real imperative is the most important part.
Yeah, and I think what you said is so important because we are going to make mistakes, especially people who don't know, CEOs where this is not their area of expertise. They're going to make mistakes, and creating an environment where it's not that it's safe, because it's never going to feel safe to make a mistake in front of a bunch of people. Like, that's
Coworkers,
uncomfortable.
especially. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But where CEOs understand that that kind of vulnerability is part of leadership. I don't know where we got the misunderstanding that, if you're a leader, you're supposed to know everything. You're not supposed to know everything. You're supposed
Yeah.
to hire people around you who can teach you, who you can rely
Or
on.
who just own it on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Delegation is
Yeah.
part
And
of leadership as well.
yeah, although I don't want people to delegate DEI. So that's the
Yeah.
No.
piece where I'm like, yeah, you
Yes.
need to delegate, but not this piece right now.
Not this
Uh,
piece. Yeah. You can
just out of
delegate
curiosity,
technology.
do they understand as well that doing this or walking this walk involves sacrifice? To, like, I know there's vulnerability in being able to, and saying the wrong thing, but like right now in this space where there's a lot of focus on artificial intelligence, if their company wants to be competitive and this big shot PhD who pioneered some sort of technique is now on the market, and their company wants to make a name by hiring them, and they find out during the interview process that there's some history of bigotry or being someone who's a little bit of a bigot or a misogynist, and being true to understanding what they want to stand for would mean to say, no, we're not going to hire you. But now they're like, is that what's right for the company from a position standpoint? But if they're thinking about like, this is right for the company because we bought into doing the right thing, whenever we find something that we act and we wouldn't hire someone like that, how do they square that circle? How do they make sure that they are doing quote unquote the right thing, which we know what the morally right thing is, but there we have the marketed, like what the market will respond to right thing. Do they tend to understand that that's a decision that they may need to make, and they should possibly like go all in on DEI in terms of making sure that it's a good place for everyone who works in the company?
I think I think there are two things. So one, like I think there are some CEOs who are very deliberate about it. I had the same situation where there was an excellent candidate, and I asked like what was the makeup of the team, and it was like all white, and like he didn't have a good explanation for why, except like he wasn't willing to lower the bar, and
Oh
it was
God.
just like super uncomfortable. Um, and though I was like, there's no way I'm going to hire him. I've got like, like the mobile team was, it was like mostly women. It was like, we had, I think, one or two black engineers, it was, and I think one gay engineer. Like it was a very diverse team. And I was like, wow, he's going to cause all of them to have a harder experience and potentially leave, which would be a disaster. So I think people are able to, I like, maybe you'll make the mistake once and then you're like, oh man, this is so hard. I'm losing all my people. This guy's a good coder. It's usually a guy. Um, but he can't make up for the 10 people that we've lost, or there's just so much friction in the organization. And it's like a constant, I've constantly got people complaining and threatening to leave. It's too much drama. I think you may make that mistake once. And then when you realize, I mean, some people make it all the time, right? But they're
Yeah.
not trying to grow. But people who are like, oh, this is a hard decision. I'm going to go with like expediency over finding the best candidate, because the best candidate is one who is not,
Yeah.
biased and doesn't exhibit like bias in the workplace. I mean, I think they know, and they're like, oh, that was a mistake. Like I erred on the wrong side. I do think there are also people who are, there's one CEO who talked about, he hired like five of his friends to start the company, and they all happened to be white men. And then he realized, oh my God, if I hire another white man, I'm just going to be like, it's just going to get harder and harder, because right
Yeah.
now, like people aren't really that excited about coming to work here. Even like the white men don't want to work here. They want to work someplace where there's more diversity. So I am purposely not going to hire another white man. And I don't really care what my lawyers say. This is what I need to do for the health of my company. Right. And
Yeah.
so I think people are like much more aware. There's so much more information out there. They are absorbing some of the data, and also they're feeling better. Like I have this, like he was like, I have this place where now I don't have to like feel like I need to go and like play beer pong or whatever. Like
Yeah.
we have like many different people doing many different things, and it's like much more relaxed. You don't have to fit into a specific mold of, what people look like and behave. It's much more relaxed. Like people can be, they don't have to do the same thing all the time.
Yeah. You can show up as yourself. I think that's so important. The way that I always put it is, it's better to have a hole than an asshole. Like you're better off, you're better off having
Yeah.
someone who knows how to get along with others, because the bullies, the people who are obnoxious to their peers for whatever reason, along whatever dimension, is those are the people who maybe they get results for themselves, but they hurt the collective results. And your
Yeah.
job as a leader is to optimize for the collective, not that one individual who's getting their job done by making it harder for everyone else around them to get their job done. you know.
Someone said that Jack Welch said the worst employee is the high performer, but poor culture fit.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The big jerk. Um, so you said something else recently, Ellen, that I think is really important that I'd love to ask you about. You said ungoverned AI opens pathways to undermine democracy, not only during election cycles, or maybe you were quoting someone else. But I think that, like, you know more about this than just about anyone else. If we take a look at why Reddit was able to be successful, it was because you started doing content moderation on. I'm going to give you all the credit. I'm sure
Thank
other
you.
people thought.
A lot of people aren't gonna like hearing that, but
Yeah.
I did some of the harder work, some of the work
Yes.
that people were not willing to do. Yeah,
Yeah. You did the really
that
hard
I can
work and
say.
you took the arrows in the back for doing that hard work. And I don't think Reddit would be where it is. And, if you look at what happened to X when they fired all their content moderators, it hasn't gone well for them. So it's really important that we learn how to understand the technologies that we're using and to make some human judgment. So talk a little bit about what's the right way to govern AI.
I think what's missing is just a set of like common expectations. Like, I want to have privacy. I want to be able to use my voice. I
Yeah,
want to be able to, believe in the authenticity, or maybe uh, have an expectation of authenticity or inauthenticity, like know what I'm dealing with.
yeah,
Um, and, I want to have like genuine conversations and learn real things and be able to take that information and maybe improve or bring it to another conversation. But what we ended up with is like this disastrous cesspool where it's all about engagement, right? We
yeah,
want engagement so we can sell ads.
yeah,
And that means like getting people riled up, or using filters to look better so that people, kind of think I'm leading this glamorous life.
yeah,
And it's causing all sorts of harm to people. And it's
yeah,
also like, how do we keep people coming? Oh, let me get them more enraged, or let me show them more
yeah,
beautiful people. And
yeah,
people feel worse and worse the more they use it, but it's driving the financial engine of the social media company. So you just get more and more of that, and it's very hard to, I left Twitter mostly about 2 years ago, and I feel so much better, right? Like,
yes.
and the people I talk to are like, I don't know why I spent so much time on it, but now I feel better.
Yeah, I guess, that's one thing we can thank Elon Musk for is getting us off Twitter.
Yeah.
It's almost
But if
like
it's not,
unmasking, right? People are
Yeah,
seeing the scales have been lifted from their eyes, or
yes,
sorry, purple flag, but everyone is able to observe the what happens when there aren't guardrails, when there aren't safety mechanisms built in to really like open the dam and the floodgates of having that wave. They're like, oh, we just thought it was gone, not that it was being held back or was being filtered through. When you remove the moderators, when you remove those safety mechanisms, and unfortunately, I think some of the okay, this is the first instance of bringing up the election. But some of the misinformation that is on those platforms allow people to fall into the belief that things don't exist or things are different than they actually are. I was seeing a lot of interviews with Trump supporters who were saying things of like, well, Trump is for he's pro-abortion. He won't get rid of it. That he protected it. That he shored up the Affordable Care Act. He made sure that it didn't fail. So when there are platforms where misinformation and hate and all that stuff gets filtered out, people think it doesn't exist. The same thing with bias and prejudice and bullying. When there is an effective system that's able to keep that in check, keep it at bay, make it so that it's rare, people sometimes get lulled into this feeling that it doesn't exist anymore. Same thing with the previous Trump administration, where there are dissenters who have made sure that they worked from within so that laws didn't get passed that were seen to be quote unquote bad. The blast radius of some of the bad policy was very limited. Going forward with the new administration and the work that you're doing, do you by any chance see an upside of this being more out there? People are being able to see it more, that you're able to be having to do less work to convince that this is a problem because there will be more examples on the negative side and not just all the examples that you have put together on the positive side. Does that help?
I think I don't like it helps is kind of a strong
Right.
word,
Yeah.
more, but I think it is kind of um, important for people to understand that this is how people are thinking and this is how people are behaving and this is these are the mechanisms that it's happening. But I don't want to let the social media companies off. Like, they amplified all of this, right? So,
Yes.
we did not have people marching around in publicly, as white supremacists 10 years ago. But because and I think Reddit was one of the worst offenders. It was an on ramp into white supremacy. Like, the social media companies were used to groom young men into white supremacy, and I think it's also being used to groom people into misogyny and racism.
Yeah.
It existed before, but it's pushing people to act in ways that they didn't before, like the marches, the protests, the insurrection. Like, those are things I don't think would have happened as readily without social media. Some people would say it's inevitable, like there was going to be this clash, but I do think that it was accelerated at the very least by social media, making it easy to find people and to groom people into these really hateful views, and then to kind of build communities of it where people felt like it was okay. And then, instead of like a group saying, hey, this is hateful and this is not welcome on my platform, like, this behavior is taboo, it's banned, it's not
Yeah.
normal, and it's not acceptable, they were encouraged for it. Like, I got more points the meaner I was. I created like these horrible memes. I created like these videos using AI to show different things. Like, all of that has been rewarded. So you end up getting more and more of it, instead of people kind of sitting down and saying, hey, like, listen, like, you're not allowed to use the N word. You're not, like, I grew up with a whole set of understanding that created like a more civil society. And maybe, and I'm sure it's true, like, a lot of people were hiding their racism and stuff, but um, better that than people acting on it in these
Yes.
horrific ways.
Yeah, it's so interesting going back to 2004 when I joined Google. One of the teams that I managed was Blogger, and I remember getting into a very heated argument with AMAC, and I was starting to take down if people were posting like racist comment. And I was in charge. I could take down whatever I wanted. I had probably more power than definitely more power than I should have. And I was told to stop doing it. And there was a big policy debate. And and I wasn't sure at the time whether I was right or I was wrong, but it was my instinct that you need some standards of behavior for the same reason that as a leader, it's your job to remember better a hole than an asshole and to fire the people who bully others. I mean, give them some feedback first and see if they can change their behavior. But if they can't, you got to get them out of your team. For the same reason, I felt like if people were advocating for evil actions or advocating for misogyny or racism, I didn't want them on the Blogger platform. And what the argument on the other side was kind of what you were referring to, Wesley. Like, oh, it's better to know what people really think. But the problem is that it's not necessarily what people really think, and that kind of evil is contagious in a way that goodness is not contagious. And in fact, I was at the federal. I was a government bureaucrat. This a small known fact. I worked at the FCC right out of business school, and this was 1996, I think. Yeah, 1990. So it was like right at the height of deregulatory neoliberalism bullshit. And I think we made some real mistakes when I was there. Like, I think we would be in a better place if we had said, and it's worth remembering, why did the FCC get created in the first place? It was in recognition of the ways that Hitler was using broadcast medium to create a genocidal, populism in Germany. Like, and we didn't want that to happen in our country. And I'm kind of back to the, you know, that way of thinking. I don't know. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think the heads of these social media companies have shown that they don't, they don't care about the health of the nation, and they don't
Yeah.
care about the health of their users, and somebody's got to step in, right? I
Yes.
think, things were like, I think, Susan Wojcicki made huge strides at
Yeah.
YouTube, Jack
Yeah.
Dorsey at Twitter, and now we've gone backwards, right?
Yes,
And now
or
here we
giant
are.
leap backwards,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
It is definitely yelling, it feels like yelling fire in a crowded theater by
Yeah.
spreading this misinformation and spreading this hatred. And it's not of, well, we'll see what happens. It's more like, we saw what happened, and
We
now
know.
that it's proven about where this leads to, it feels as if it's time to actually said that is harm, and we can not only show how much harm is caused, but we can actually trace it back to its origins and where it came from. And so that should be enough evidence to kind of like hopefully disrupt the mechanisms. But
Yep.
hope, hope is a big H, hope, that maybe that one day that will be codified in some sort of law as well.
Well, you're taking some action. I agree with that, Wesley. Ellen, you're taking some action by investing in some great companies that are pushing the world to a better place. So what are some of the investments you've made recently that you're most excited about?
I'm excited about all my investments, so I'm very
Okay.
like
Okay, yeah,
I'm
I'm
very
not
happy
asking
with
you to
the
choose a
companies.
favorite
I
child,
can't.
but
Um, I mean, I started investing a little bit in healthcare. So I have one company that I invested in called Delphina that's focused on, on the health of pregnant women
mhm,
during their pregnancies. And, they're measuring and collecting data that goes back to their doctor,
mhm.
or they'll flag an issue. We had one instance that I've heard of that. Somebody using the app realized I think it was her blood pressure was very high. She went in to see her doctor, and the doctor was like, "Wow, you have preeclampsia, and you need to
Wow.
be on bed rest. And if you hadn't come in, you would have lost your baby." So it's, that's the kind of thing where you're just like, well, I feel good about my investment.
Gotta
I feel
feel
very
great about
happy,
that. Yeah,
uh, and hopefully we can reach more people and get more, and help more people. There's another company that's super interesting, also in healthcare. Um, the entrepreneur, is focused on helping people with hypertension, and a lot of that happens in the Black community, and there's some distrust of hospitals and doctors in that community, but there's a lot of trust of barbers. So he's built relationships with barber shops where they're measuring blood pressure, and then connecting them to hypertension treatment or to a pharmacist to treat it. And then that that person's going to come back in, a month or 2 months to get their haircut again, and you can check up on them. So it's kind of coming to where people are, instead of kind of really like keeping the system in place that isn't working for a set of people. So
that's
that's exciting
amazing.
to me. Yeah,
I was
it's so
also
cool.
interested to read about multitudes. Talk about multitudes. That seemed
Oh,
exciting
that's
to
so
me.
cool. I just got off the phone with the founder yesterday. It's just a very like using data to help build better cultures within companies. And it started a little bit more on the DEI side, but now it's really like, how do we keep the engineering teams going forward and communicating, and where do we see problems, and how do we use the data to kind of highlight these problems and move the teams along, which they're based out of New Zealand, but you wouldn't know
Very
it
cool.
Yeah, I think it's a very cool company. It's like they started very small. They didn't raise very much money, and they've just been working really, really hard and just building a product to in an area where I think engineering, you end up with that great coder managing people, and it's just often a disaster because
Yeah.
I don't think we give enough managerial training or they don't want it. I tried to train some managers at Reddit and they were so angry
Yes.
about being trained. And I was like, wow, it just boggled my mind. Like I
Yeah.
didn't realize it was going to cause such anger. But there's, so kind of trying to help people with some of these problems in a way that is less threatening, less, intimidating. You're using data and you're helping people understand what's happening in a way that sometimes a third party can do. When you were a consultant at one point, Kim, like sometimes you
Yes.
need that third
Mhm.
party data and kind of voice of reason to get the changes through.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I think we're just about at time, but Ellen, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Where can people find you? Where do you most love to be found?
I'm starting to spend more time on Blue Sky. I have a website where there's like a contact page, and I have a book, Reset. Wesley was so kind to mention it earlier, that people can buy and read. And yeah, that's it.
And projectinclude.org also,
Yes. Thank
I
you.
assume.
Yeah, and we have just a lot of great information there. We've had some people say, we've gotten rid of our DI division, but we're going through all the steps on Project Include, so we need you
Yeah.
more than ever. So that's been it's like mixed. I'm
Yeah.
sorry that this isn't working, but at least we're able to help people who need it.
Love that. All right. Well,
Thank you
thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you both. I feel like we could have talked even longer. Like this is a good conversation. Thank
We'll
you.
have you back. We'll try to get you back.
Yes, we'll do it again. All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.